Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here as usual with Jeffrey Poole and Joe Lalo. We have a good guest for you today, Zach Bohannon. He just got started writing this year, or at least publishing this year, and he's already sold a ton of books and got some great reviews. So I'll just read your little bio here, summed up from Amazon, and then I'll let Zach talk. But he lives in Nashville, Tennessee with his wife, daughter, and a German Shepherd named Guinness. He's been a drummer in 2 heavy metal bands, and his love of story first found an outlet in the lyrics he wrote. Earlier this year, he started publishing horror and post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction. He's already got 5 novels and some short stories out. Hi, Zach. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, you guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks for coming on. Well, I'll just ask a few intro questions, and I know we're really curious about your productivity, so we'll hit on that too, and then get into the marketing questions on the second half of the show, if that works for you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Why don't we start out? Can you tell us kind of how you got your start and how you went from heavy metal drummer to author?
Yeah, I guess in short, I spent most of my 20s playing in a couple of different heavy metal bands, did some touring and stuff during pretty much my whole 20s and my late teens. During that time, one of the bands I was in, I did I wrote all the lyrics, and a lot of it was like fantasy based. I had a love for writing all before that, but music was kind of my outlet and stuff, and I stopped doing that. I stopped really playing music seriously in 2008, I guess it would be now, and had kind of a creative lull before I started writing, which happened. I started in nonfiction, so I wrote a nonfiction book in 2013. Which was actually a weight loss book because I lost 100 pounds in a year, and I was blogging and stuff and doing some different things, and put out a nonfiction book, which did okay, I guess. But I learned a lot, and I learned how to self-publish. I learned some, I was getting into the marketing and stuff around then, and late last year decided I'm gonna take a dive into fiction, and here we are. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the weight loss.
Yeah. It's a lot of it. Having a kid and writing, kind of reversed a lot of it.
Well, we don't know. We don't know where you started from, so you look awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
But that's funny because I actually used to listen to like Blind Guardian and Hammerfall and a couple of European metal bands, and I think the only reason I liked them was they did fantasy lyrics. They did like a bunch of Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah, the band I was in was actually the second band I was in, which actually my wife sang in. We were really heavily influenced by Blind Guardian. So that's funny.
I haven't kept up with them. I don't know if they're still out there or how it works.
Yeah, actually, the company I work for, we just sent their drummer some stuff the other day, so they're still out there touring. So.
All right. So, what made you decide to jump back into telling stories and self-publish? It sounds like you were probably always going to self-publish after doing the nonfiction yourself, but were you tempted to go traditional at all?
No. I really have a entrepreneur mindset. I really like. I'm a control freak. Like even when I played in bands, I was always the one who kind of was like the manager. Like I booked all the shows, I scheduled all our recording sessions, I handled all our merchandise. Like I did everything. So I have a knack for marketing and for just kind of being in control. So we're obviously blessed with this great opportunity to be able to do what we do, and I never really even thought about traditional publishing, and so just decided to stick with self-publishing, and got pretty lucky out of the gate. So, but yeah, so.
Yeah, I think they kind of frown on it too when you try to say like, "Hey, I want to publish 6 novels this year." If you do get a contract, is that cool with you guys or no problem?
Yeah, I know there was an article going around where somebody was saying, you shouldn't write 4 books in a year or something, and it was just all the indies were just laughing at it. I think you might have tweeted it even. I don't remember. A bunch of people did, but yeah, it's just I don't think they would. I don't think they'd like that too much. So.
Although I have noticed that with some of the authors that have done well in the last few years, traditionally published, they've actually published like their first three novels in their trilogy, kind of back to back to back, and so I think they're wising up a little bit and seeing that that really helps if you don't have to wait 2 years between books.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to eventually. I mean, they're going to have to really change their mindset on pricing and on and on how often they release stuff, because that whole model is being changed. So you know, gonna have to catch up at some point and just blend with the market. So we'll see.
Yeah. For right now, I'm thrilled that they're pricing their ebooks at $15
Yeah,
because I'm like, hey, mine looks really good at $4.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, me too. So I'm definitely not complaining. So
All right, you got to tell us on the productivity side. How are you getting so much done while working a job and having a family and taking care of your beer drinking dog?
yeah, honestly, all that productivity stuff and that discipline I learned during that time when I was losing all my weight. So um, when I decided, okay, I'm going to get healthy, I'm not the kind of person to half-ass anything. So like I go 100%, and it got me in the habit of waking up early, making sure I got everything done beforehand. Like I would go to the gym before I went to work. Every Sunday I would prep all my lunches for the week, so I had stuff ready to go. So a lot of it was just planning, and that has all that I've learned, all that discipline has definitely come over to writing, because like you said, I mean, I know that I have a very common thing that a lot of people have, where I work a 40-hour week job, or actually usually more. I have a 14-month-old daughter, I have a wife, I have a dog. So I have to make the most out of the time I have. So I've gotten really disciplined about writing. I get up at, this morning, for instance, I woke up at 4 in the morning. I got up, I went to work. I have a key to my job. I go and I get there, early enough where I get about an hour in, and then I go to work. And then on my lunch break, I spend my whole lunch break writing as well. I eat at my desk, so I have a full hour to write. And then usually by then, I've gotten in my 1,500 to 2,000 words, and I can come home and I can have my family time, and not really have to do stuff. I was writing in the evening a lot too. I was doing a third block, but I've kind of slowed down on that so I can have my family time and stuff. And just get my eyes off a screen, because I'm in front of a computer for my job a lot of the day too, not the whole day, but a good chunk of it. So I just had to give my eyes a break. So that's really it. I mean, it's really just I have this thing, if you really want something, then you'll make it a priority. Like if you won't make something a priority in your life, then you probably don't want it that bad. Like I love getting up and writing. Like it's easy for me to wake up at 4 in the morning, because I know I'm going to get all this stuff out of my brain before I start working for the day. So if you want something bad enough, then you'll make it a priority. And if you're not willing to make it a priority, then you probably need to think about doing something else.
Sounds very typical of a lot of writers I've talked to that are actually able to do it while juggling all these other things. Just setting that alarm clock an hour earlier than usual. And I like to write a little bit when I get up in the morning, just when I'm trying to like hit a high word count and get a good goal, and if I can do a little bit more. Right there, I got my latte, I gotta have my espresso to help things along. I'm not a natural early riser, though. We were talking about, Jeff and I live in Arizona now, before the show started. If you want to be an early riser, that's a really good place to live, because you've got sunlight blazing in the window at 5 a.m. But
I guess for me, since I write horror, it's kind of nice to wake up and it be dark outside. So
I always had trouble when I lived in Seattle, because it's completely the opposite. It can be noon and it's still like dark out. I don't know where the sun is. It's up there somewhere. But let me hand you to the guys now. I know they have some questions on the productivity stuff too, and we'll do the marketing questions later.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. I'm going to start off. My first question you sort of answered, so I'm going to modify it a little bit. You mentioned that you get about 1,500 to 2,000 words in a day. Is that like? And you specifically said that you write in blocks of an hour before and an hour at lunch. Is the let's say 1,500 words? Is that do you try to make sure you hit that number of words, or you just try to make sure that you work for a certain amount of time?
Honestly, I like to be around that 1,500 word mark, but I use on Scrivener. I use like I give everything a deadline, which is another thing too that goes into my productivity is that I always give myself a deadline to aim at, and so I use the feature on Scrivener where you can have your deadline and then it calculates how many words you need to write that day. And I always like to get my motivation is to write a lot more than it says, so that number goes down the next day and takes a little bit of pressure off. But 15, I've kind of found that 1,500 words is kind of where I really like to be. If I can get to 2,000, that's great. And then on the weekends, I'll have higher days on the weekends. So, on Saturday I'll try to hit around 3,000, and Sunday I'll usually try to hit around 2,000 to 2,500. So yeah, it's to answer your question. I love hitting that 1,500 word mark, and I'm pretty happy if I get there. So
Excellent. The calculated to hit a deadline thing. I personally only really do that during NaNoWriMo, and I don't really have to do the calculation. I mean, I like to see the number go down. That's handy. That's why, like, the website is handy for that because then I don't even have to use a feature in Scrivener. All right, so. As you say, with all your responsibilities, I gotta imagine it's not difficult to feel the pressure to write when the opportunity arises, and you make opportunities every day. That being said, I mean, you're writing and basically, from what it sounds like, every spare moment, like you I should say, produce these 2 periods, and you write always in those 2 periods, plus as much as you can on the weekend. Do you always feel motivated to write during those times, or do you sometimes have to sort of, maintain, like discipline is the word you kept using? Do you have to really be disciplined?
I have my days. I mean, there's days where I'm really not feeling it, and I might, if that happens, I might say, okay, I'm going to take the morning off and I'm going to do some reading or something instead before I clock in for my job, and see how I feel in the afternoon. And there's some days where, and it's very rare where I don't get stuff in. But I think the key is that I love what I'm writing. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. So I am in the early process of doing a collaboration with Jay Thorne, fellow horror author, and we had this idea, and I was doing the whole first draft, and I got about 15,000 words in, and each day I found myself like really not motivated and struggling. And I found out it was the story. Like I just wasn't feeling the story. So I emailed Jay and I said, look, dude, I'm not feeling this. I think we need to go a different direction. Let's just trash all this. And that's what we did. We came up with something else, and we're going another way. So I think the key is that, like I said, I love what I'm writing. And I'm really, right now I'm writing the 4th book in a series. I'm really invested in these characters. So, and I've pretty much, plotted out most of the book, so I pretty much know where I'm going each day. So it's pretty easy for me to sit down and be like, okay, these characters need to do this, and this today, and knock it out. So to answer your question, it's really not that hard for me to find the motivation. And like you said, I know that I have to hit my time when I can, because my time is precious. So.
Yep. I gotta. When you say taking a day when it's just not flowing to read or something, I think that's useful. I know that an unusually large number of people I've seen talking about going full time will be like, well, I was writing 2,000 words in 2 hours, so if I switch that to 8 hours, I'll be writing 8,000 words. And like the word I always use is juice. There's only so much juice in a given day, and sometimes you gotta refill. You can't. So. It's good to know that, like, I would say you're handling that well. That's roughly how I would do it too.
Yeah.
And
oh, I was just gonna say, and it's funny you say that, because I kind of question like whether if I went full time, like I kind of wonder if my productivity would really jump up that much, because I'm with you. Like, I think the biggest day I've ever hit was like a Saturday, and I did like 4,200 words, and I was gone. Like I was so mentally tired at that point.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wonder, and if I do end up going full time, I'll probably be a stay-at-home dad anyway, so that'll be another full-time job. So I'll still have to hit writing blocks like in the morning and stuff. So But I do question whether or not I would really be able to hit like 7,000 words a day or something. I don't think I'd be able to do it. So.
Yeah, I think it varies from person to person, but in my experience, my word count increased without a doubt, but it did not double or triple, despite the fact
Yeah.
there was twice and three times as much time available. Because creativity is a finite resource; it has to be replenished periodically. It's not like digging a hole.
Absolutely, yeah, I completely agree with you on that.
And my last bit for this section is you you talk about having a goal for like a book length and then doing the calculation and seeing when your deadline is. Do you think it's more important to really crank out words or to crank out books? More specifically, do you think it's important to have more shorter books or just let the book find its own length?
That is a really good question. That's a great question. You know, it's a funny thing. I'm kind of at a point where I'm trying to figure out like if the reason my books are this certain length are because I'm putting that goal there, and I'm saying like, because my Empty Bodies books, which is my main series, like those books come in around 50,000 words, and I think it's funny because I pretty much hit that every time. So, and then I have a longer book. I have a standalone that I put 65,000 in that little number, and I hit 65,000. So like, it's funny, but to answer your question, kind of, and this kind of gets into marketing a little bit. I'm purposely writing books that length, because I feel like that, like especially of what I write, like I don't know if I think it's easier to write a page turner and really hold people's attention with shorter books. Now obviously I know you guys write fantasy; it's a little bit different. But I think for what I'm doing, it really works. And I'm able to get those. And for me right now as well, I like to get those. I want to get, a lot of products out. So it's been writing the 50,000 word books. Yeah, there's people that say, I wish it was longer. And I think the big thing is that my audiobook sales have really suffered more than anything. But yeah, that's just I kind of put my stake in the ground early and said this is kind of what I want to do, and it's worked out for me. So.
Yeah, I got to agree. When you set a word goal, the tendency is to hit that goal.
Yeah.
My problem is that I often overshoot that goal. I basically, as you say, fantasy lends itself to longer things, and I think you're absolutely right that particularly when you're trying to produce something that's tense in atmosphere, a shorter story pretty much requires you to have a tighter pace. So shorter stories lend themselves well to things that need to sort of move faster and lock in. But well, yeah, that about covers my productivity questions. I'm going to hand you off to Jeff now and see what he's got to say.
Perfect.
First question, context please. Beer swilling dog?
Yeah, so Guinness is my favorite beer. Well, it was. Actually, I'm drinking this Samuel Smith Organic Chocolate Stout now, which I'm doing this for Matt Morris, by the way. So Matt, this is for you because he and I usually drink when we're on podcast together. And I didn't do it the other day when I was on Author Strong, so I'm making up for it. But yeah, so my dog is kind of the color of a Guinness. He's black and tan, and so we went with Guinness, even though he's a German Shepherd. So, but yeah, so.
Cool. Okay, so with regards to talking about word count, talking about the time, how many hours a day you're allowed to write. What do you find is the most effective solution if you ever come across writer's block? I mean, what do you have to do to essentially get the juices flowing again?
I don't believe in writer's block. I think that if you have writer's block, you're writing the wrong thing. So, if I do feel like I'm always in production of another project too. For instance, right now, on top of writing the fourth book of my Empty Body series, I'm also doing pre-production for a trilogy that Jay Thorne and I are going to write, and I'm also doing pre-production on a sequel to one of my standalones. So if I just have a day where I'm just not feeling it, or I'm just not like, I can't think of where I want to take the story, I will just move over and I'll work on an outline or something else. But for the most part, I don't really have that issue. And I truly believe, I think that, for me, I think that if you have writer's block, then you need to write something else. And I mean, obviously, if it's like 1 day or 2 days or something, okay, maybe you're just not feeling it. But if it's like a thing where you hear about these people like, I haven't written in 2 weeks, well, you're either writing the wrong thing or you really don't want to be a writer. So.
Yeah, I can understand that. If it's taking you that long to write something, then yeah, you clearly are on the wrong subject, because you need to be happy and excited about what you're writing, or else what's the point? Yeah, I'm more like referring to just, there's been just a day or two you're like, dude, this just isn't working. Let's go play with the dog for a little bit, and then eventually it comes back to you. So, okay, so my next question I have for you is, where do you draw your inspiration from? I mean, many writers, myself included, we often model our characters after real people. So sometimes they're protagonists, sometimes they're the bad guys, antagonists. So my question for you is, you're a horror writer. Have you ever been motivated to create a character based on someone that has rubbed you the wrong way with the sole intent to have that character meet a grisly death?
I have not done that, actually, not yet. That's a really good question, though. But I have one book. I have a standalone kind of demonic paranormal book called Lines of the Devil. That's the book that is around 65,000 words. That's the one book I have that characters are actually based off people. That book is basically a memoir of my 20s. It's like when I was playing in bands. And it's actually my least selling book. That book is kind of flopped, but I really don't care, because it was such a I can't think of the word, a relief, I guess, to be able to get everything down on paper. It was a release for me. Cathartic. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Yeah, it was very cathartic for me to be able to get that stuff down on paper, because it deals with some very, a dark time in my life when, my best friend passed away and stuff. And, so that book definitely has, some stuff that is based on people. But my Empty Bodies book, the whole idea for that actually came from my job. So I work for this music instrument distributor, and we have this big 50,000 square foot warehouse. And I have a couple of my employees. I have 14 employees that work for me, and a couple of my employees like to go in this empty office and sleep on their lunch break. And I walked by one day and saw one of them sleeping, and I was like, I wonder if they woke up and we all turned into zombies, what would happen? And I started writing this short story that turned into a novel that turned into a series. So in that particular instance, I was more inspired by the setting. I mean, that book, like, one of the characters is the warehouse, is my office that I work in. Like, every building, every part of the building and everything. So I guess to that degree, I was inspired to a degree by people, but I don't really take personality traits from people I know necessarily and put them, I haven't done it yet. I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but.
I just figured you'd be like, one day you're standing in line at Starbucks and the little lady in front of you cannot make up her mind, or else has never been in a Starbucks period, like, oh, what about this? What about this? And you in the meantime are going, as a horror writer, going, okay, she's walking by one of those shredding machines that, like, the tree department people are trimming trees on this, bump right on in there, and no more lady there. So I figured if anyone could get away with it, it would be you. But
yeah, you're exactly right. So I'm sure that'll happen eventually. So.
Okay, a lot of writers base their material on experiences or skills they've learned throughout their lives. Has the opposite ever happened to you? For instance, have you created a character, given them a unique skill, and then find out it's something you're interested in but don't know anything about it, and you decide to take it up on it? Like my own, I really got into archery. I like the boomerangs and old archaic weapons, just because I started having a lot of my characters use it. I was like, this would be really cool if I ever picked this up there. And then the result, on the backside of that closet door over there, is a compound bow that I like shooting every great once in a while. So it's a lot of fun. I was just curious if other people did that.
Yeah, that hasn't happened to me yet, but I'm seeing myself on the way to that. So, in my post-apocalyptic stuff, it's the story takes place in the South, so it's very easy for me to make characters that have guns, because everyone here has guns except for me. But I want to change that. Like, it's making me kind of want to get into firearms. And actually, I'm going to when I go down to Mississippi for Christmas, my brother-in-law has like 8 assault rifles, and he and I'm gonna talk him into taking me out to do some shooting and show me some stuff so I can, try to kind of learn more about that so I can make it more realistic in the book. So hasn't happened yet, but I can definitely see it happening very soon with guns and stuff. So.
Okay, I was kind of afraid you'd answer this by going, yeah, see, I found this hockey mask, and I looked in my garage, and I see the chainsaw. Like, that would be fun. Scare the crap out of the kids. It's getting close to Halloween. Why not? So
I do have
right.
I do have a bunch of hockey gear in my garage because I am a hockey player, so I could do that.
Hey, that would work. There you go. But all right, that's it for my questions for right now. Let me pass you back over to Lindsay.
Perfect.
All right, well, let's jump into the marketing stuff if we're done fantasizing about putting people in wood chippers and things. All right, so your first book, Empty Bodies, I'm checking out on Amazon. I love the font and coloring on it. They're great covers. Did you have a big plan when you came in? And I should tell the readers who aren't looking on Amazon, it's got 180 few reviews right now, and you just published it in February, I believe.
Yeah, right, the 1st of February.
And it's definitely looks like it sold a lot of copies. So what was your plan going into it?
My biggest thing, I guess the two biggest things was, I wanted to make sure, for one, that I kind of established a brand early. So my cover artist is one of my best friends in the world. We've known each other since we were 10 years old, and he kind of knew I was getting into this, and he's a graphic artist, and he was like, I kind of want to do book covers. I want to give it a shot. And I was like, I don't know, like, just because you're a graphic artist doesn't mean you're going to be good at book covers. But I was like, all right, I'll take a shot at it. I was like, here's what the book's about. I went on Amazon and I looked at I looked at some covers in the genre. The big one, and I'm going to give him a shout out because I know he watches this show, is Sam Sisavath, who does the Purge of Babylon stuff. His covers are amazing, and I showed those to my graphic artist along with some others. And he came back, that cover that is on Empty Bodies with the tree and the glow coming up and the plane crash in the background, that was like the first thing he sent me. And I was just like, oh, this is awesome. This is perfect. And then, did some of the wording and stuff. So I knew that I wanted to have an established brand early. I wanted to make sure the book was edited. I didn't get the book edited as well as I wanted to, and I do have a few 1-star reviews that reflect that. And I deserve those because they're from an early point of the book before I did some other edits. But yeah, so that was the big thing, was just establishing a brand early. I used a 99-cent pricing structure out of the gate because I wasn't really sure about that, and then going back to Jay Thorne, he wrote me this great email where he basically was just like, no one gives a crap about your book or about you. So for you to sit there and try to charge a lot more out of the gate, like, do you want to get readers or do you want to, try to make money? And luckily I took his advice and I was able to do both. So, yeah.
So it was a motivational email. Nobody gives a crap about you.
Yeah. But it was great. And he was real early on. We met through his podcast that he was doing at the time, and he read the book before it even got an editor, which is crazy that he did that because it was terrible, and gave me a lot of really good advice. And but that was one of the things, and that really stuck with me, and it was the best decision I made. So.
Nice. Did you find that it sold right off the bat then? I can see where a cover 99 cents would go a long way to help.
It went, I think because of a combination of the cover, I got real lucky with keywords. Like, I really studied keywords, got good keywords in. I made sure my subtitle, the subtitle is a post-apocalyptic tale of dystopian survival. So, I made sure I had all that stuff in place. And, And I think it was crazy. It just kind of took off. And for like 4 months, I hung around the top 1,000 in the Kindle store. It was nuts. I still don't really know how it happened, but, I think it was a mix of connections. And, I was on a couple of podcasts early on that helped out. I was on a podcast with a guy named Chris Brogan. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he's a big marketing guru who's written like 8 New York Times bestsellers, and we became friends back when I was doing weight loss blogging. and he had me on. I think I got a little spike there, and it just kind of the algorithms picked up on Amazon, and it kind of took off. So.
Nice. Did you try to do guest posts for a number of bloggers, or was it just like, hey, will you interview me? Or
Nah, I didn't do any blogging or anything. I did that podcast with Chris. I had some friends, like send stuff out to their mailing list that I'd made, and I wrote the next book. And Lindsay, honestly, like I wish I could sit here and say like I know how the book took off, but I honestly think it's a combination of the right genre at the right time, a great cover. The book was edited well. Like I said, not as well as I wanted it to, but that was fixed. And the pricing structure and being in Kindle Unlimited. I think those things were kind of the big. I know Kindle Unlimited is kind of a hot topic, and I've heard you guys talk about it on this show. But it was for a new author, it's a great thing, and it helped me out a lot. So.
No, I totally believe you. I definitely see it happen where, especially 99 cents and an awesome cover. And if you're also, I think dystopian is one of the more popular genres in kind of within science fiction. And, it can happen. If you just get a little momentum, and people love a bargain. And it sounds like you were in Kindle Unlimited right from the beginning. Did you get a lot of borrows? Like, how was that versus sales?
God, I wish I could. It was about 50-50 maybe, and I got. I mean, when I was right around 1,000, in the store, I was getting a lot of borrows, and of course this was in March before the page reads came in, and where I was making $1.30 off a 99-cent book, so it was awesome. I mean, in March. The book had only been out, not even been out a month. I think it was March or April. One of those months, like I matched my regular job income, and a lot of that was from KU. So being in KU out the gate has really helped out a lot, I feel.
Yeah, that's a really good argument for it too. When you do have a 99-cent novel and you want to price it that low to draw in new readers, that you could actually make more from the borrows. I mean, right now you could make even more if it's a longer novel. I just did a serial with my pen name this month and put it in KU, and it's like 120,000 words, and it's really done well with the page reads. So I'm not totally against it. I'm wide with all my regular stuff, but if you're starting out, I think it's definitely something worth looking at.
For sure, yeah, because it's so hard to get traction on our stores, and I went. I did take my first book perma-free for about 6 weeks recently, and I ended up putting it back in KU because I only put the one book. I didn't do the other books, and I just wasn't ready because they're getting too many page reads, and I realized that I think that I need to do it all at once, and it doesn't really, like, I was getting a lot of free traffic, but I wasn't really, my sell-through wasn't really going up. Like, I was still getting really good sell-through, but it wasn't really increasing too much, and I was like, wow, I'm losing the money on this the first book, and even though it's 99 cents, like, it still is more money than being free, and I don't have the book to offer on these other stores. So anyways, long story short, I decided it was too early, and I'm going to try it again later when I have like 6-7 books in that series, and I'm ready to kind of take them all out and give it a go. So.
All right, yeah, I've definitely, I did the same thing with my pen name where I had one perma-free because I wanted it to be perma-free. The book one, I had to be in all the other stores, so Amazon would price match. And that did work. I got sales on Amazon, but excuse my dog who's shaking off. But, it's sort of like, then you've got people that want the next books on Kobo and Apple, and you're like, oh, sorry, they're in KU on Amazon, and you just kind of get cranky emails.
And what I did was I actually on those other stores, I created a separate mailing list, and the call to action on those other stores, I actually offered the second book for free if people would join that mailing list. So I was giving people the option to get the second book for free, and then when I decided that I wasn't going to go wide and I was going to put book one back into KU, like, this list doesn't have that many people on it, but I told these people, I said, look, I've made this decision, but you guys committed to joining this list, so I'm just giving them the books for free anyway. So and then in hopes that maybe that'll build some goodwill for when I do go wide with everything eventually, which is what I want to do eventually. But KU is awesome for me right now, so I'm just going to stick with it for now, and make that transition later. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way with the pen name. I'm just like, if they write to me and they're like mad that they can't get book 3 or book 4, I'm like, yeah, here's a free copy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But since you were talking about the calls to action, I was going to ask you about that anyway. Why don't you kind of tell our listeners like what that is and what you're doing and kind of how that's working for you?
I've been messing with a bunch of different stuff. So calls to action, for anyone who's not familiar, is in a book in particular, if when someone gets into your book, it's somewhere you want to send them. Like maybe you want them to get on your mailing list. So you have a link to your mailing list, and maybe you have like a free book or a free story or something you're giving them. Or it could be that you want people to review your book. So you have a call to action in there to ask people to review your book. I've been experimenting. So when I first did the book, the first book ends on kind of a cliffhanger. And so when you got to the last page, it would say to be continued. And, if you want updates on when the next book is coming out, and also be able to be involved in exclusive contests and giveaways, because I'll do like Amazon gift card giveaways and stuff on my mailing list, then click this link. And I was offering a short story, which I still do, but I don't promote it. Like I don't say you're going to get this free book, and I still get a lot of signups, which is great because it means these people are not necessarily signing up just to get something for free. Like they actually want to hear from me. So I built a list based on people that really, really like actually want to know like when the next book is coming out or whatever. So that worked out, and then more recently, I tried. I actually stole something from a science fiction book. A while back, I wanted, just to give a quick backstory, I wanted to read a space opera. So I went and started looking at space operas and stuff on Amazon, and I found this book called Dark Space by Jasper T. Scott, and had like 3,000 reviews. And I was like, okay, well, this has got to be a really good book. It's got 3,000 reviews. I'm going to check it out. So I read the book, get to the end, and his call to action is, do you want the second book for free? Leave me a review. And I was like, dude totally got me with this call. Like he got me to get into the series because all these people left a review. Like I was going off that review number. And I was like, I'm going to try that. So I offered the second book for free in my call to action, and it's worked out really well. I don't have it in there right now because I'm kind of messing with some other stuff, but in short, I ended up gaining about 100 reviews in about 6 weeks. And the really cool thing is that I would tell them they had to forward me the email that Amazon sends them to say that your review is live, and then I would email them back a personal message, and it was like I somewhat had like a script that I was just copy and pasting, but then I would add in something personal. But in part of that email had its own call to action that said, and you should join my mailing list. Like, I don't remember exactly what it says, and most of those people joined my mailing list. So, and Lindsay, I'm sure you'll agree, I'm sure all you guys would agree, all day long, I'll give away a $2.99 book to get a review and a mailing list sign up. Like, I'll do that all day long. So, to get those things was awesome. And so it's worked out really well. I'm probably going to do it again. The reason I took it out is because my sell-through rate didn't change a ton, but it did go down a little. And so I wanted to get my sell-through on the second book up a little bit. And also I had put on there that it was a July or an August special, so I didn't want to just like make it look fake and keep it going for September or whatever. So I'm sure I'll do it again eventually, but yeah, I'm getting close to 200 reviews, so that's not too bad for a book that hadn't even been out a year. So.
All right, yeah, I'll tell you, I've done the same thing. I did it with my pen name because I did it anonymously, so I wasn't going on like my regular mailing list and everything. Although I think we've talked about it, I was either on this show or another one, and then I got an email from someone that said it's actually in Amazon's terms of service that you can't give away anything accept a review copy of the book you're trying to get a review on.
Yeah.
So now I'm really careful with the wording if I do that. Like if you want to be on my review list for this series, send me an email with a copy of review. And I figure you're probably not going to, Amazon's like policing the back of your book, but I just, I try to be safe. So I think it's a great thing. Why not? There's all sorts of people giving away free stuff and hoping to get review copies and people into your series. But I'm acknowledging that
because you brought that up.
Yeah, because I've had a couple of emails from people when we talked about that before, and they sent me the, like the section in which I've never read, gone through and read the whole terms of service. So it's just something to be aware of.
And a key part of it too, and I've had people tell me that, and I really am glad you brought that up because I totally didn't even think about bringing that up. But that is a very good point, and it is risky. But I also make sure I tell people in there, like, you don't have to leave me a good review. I mean, you can leave me a 1-star review. I'm still going to send you that book. And luckily, most people leave a good review, but I've gotten a couple of like 3 stars that had some negative things to say. But I was like, that's cool. Whatever, that's fine. I'm going to send you the book. So, and I don't want all 5-star reviews anyway. So, so it's all good. But I am glad you brought that up because that's important for people to know. So, because it is a risk.
Yeah, I think it's super helpful if you say, leave an honest review. I'll give you the book no matter what you do. And, just as a reader myself, I get a little suspicious when I'm surfing around on Amazon. I'm like, oh, look, this book has 80 5-star reviews and no negative reviews whatsoever. I'm like, who did they pay to get those reviews?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. So, and it's, unfortunately, and I kind of mentioned this, and I'm totally open to it, like, on my a couple of my top reviews are bad reviews, and but it's fine. Like I said, I deserve those. I kind of wish there were better reviews at the very top, but the book still sells, and I still have a lot of people emailing me, telling me they love it. So it is what it is. Like, I really don't even care. So.
Yeah, and people, it doesn't matter. Like the more reviews, the better. It doesn't, if they're not great, it surprisingly doesn't matter. People just want to like see that lots of other people are reading this book, I guess. I think it's actually Matt on Author Strong was just talking about, if you look at the new Star Wars book out by Chuck Wendig. Was that you?
Yeah,
I was just listening to the show.
Yeah,
it's like at a 2.5 average with thousands of reviews, and it's still, I don't know, top 100 in the Amazon store. So.
But people are going to be smart enough, like to go and read and see why it's so bad. Like, yeah, they were making fun of his writing, but then, there was a lot of people making fun of him because he has like a homosexual character and stuff, and it's like, come on, people are going to be able to read through that stuff and be smart enough, but it's kind of a weird thing. That's kind of an anomaly because it does have Star Wars on the title, but he, whatever. He's like 400 it's 400 in the Kindle store. So even though I doubt he's seeing a royalty on it, because I think usually those things worked out where they just get paid a flat fee for media stuff, but I could be wrong. But anyways, either way, he's having fun with it on Twitter. So,
Yeah, it seems like any popular book, it's going to have some bad reviews. If you go look at even Harry Potter and the beloved stuff out there, you can find plenty of 1-star reviews. So.
Yeah, and as for me, like, I don't read my reviews anymore, but or I try not to, like, I don't do it that much. But if if I get a 1-star review that like says something very productive, like, that's totally cool. The ones I hate, and I know you guys can attest to this, is like, I think I was looking at one of Sean Platt and David Wright's books the other day, and they had a 1-star review that said, "Sorry, didn't get around to reading it." And I'm like, why would someone even take the time to do that? Like, those are the ones that are kind of annoying, but whatever. I know we're kind of going off on a tangent, but.
Yeah, I think some of the Kindles will actually prompt people at the end, like, can you leave a review for this book? And I think that's where you get kind of these crummy one sentence, like, fine, here's my stupid review.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, one more question for me before I hand you to the guys again. I'm curious, you've done some horror books as well as your zombie dystopian series. I've kind of heard from other people that horror is like a harder niche to really sell well in. Have you seen differences in the two, that it's easier one way or the other?
So I kind of have a really good scale of stuff. So my zombie stuff obviously sells the best. I mentioned before that I have another horror novel that doesn't sell, and then I have one that's kind of in the middle. I have a book that is called The Witness, and it's I think it's around 50,000 words. And it was like basically me wanting to like do a throwback to like old 80s like campy slasher books. And it's like your typical like college kids go out on a road trip, get caught by these people, they're in this weird place, and all this crazy stuff happens to them. But that book's done really well. Like it had a pretty high ranking for a while. I got an ENT really early on that book, and I think that kind of helped that book stay up in the rankings for a little bit. And that book still sells pretty decent, and I have a lot of people asking for the sequel. So, it's tough. I mean, I think for me, like I kind of want to have. I want to be known as a horror writer. I don't want to be necessarily known as the zombie guy. Like that's like what I don't want. But I like writing that stuff, and it happens to sell, so I will keep writing it. But I have no problem like writing this other stuff in between that may or may not sell. But the good thing is that like it's not like those my books don't have a shelf life. So like they're gonna be there, and if it sells, once I have a big catalog, like even if it sells a couple of months, it's just like adding on to everything else. So, it's hit or miss, but it is what it is. So so I guess to answer your question, like just it's kind of cool that I have a kind of a big, a middle, and a low. So but I still am trying to crack the horror nut a little bit, I guess. So.
Right, and I suppose it helps that in your zombie stuff you've actually got a series going on, whereas it looks like the horror books are standalone. So always. And
it's funny. Yeah, that's a tough thing too, because like horror books are really hard to write a series because you want to kill everybody. So it's like it's really hard to write a series in a horror. But that's part of the reason why why I told him I wanted to scratch our project, because our project was going to be a standalone. And I told him, I was like, dude, let's not do that. Let's write a trilogy and actually commit to it. And yeah, so yeah, having a series I think is definitely a big help too. And the one book that is doing decent is going to be a trilogy as well. I just have to get around to writing the second book. So.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to hand you to Joe. I think is going to go next with some more questions.
Cool.
Yep. Something I've noticed about horror series is that while most series are about the heroes, horror series are usually about the villains, and probably for a very good reason.
Yeah, that's kind of what my one book, The Witness, is like. It's kind of more like kind of like Rob Zombie's, like Devil's Rejects, House of a Thousand Corpses. Like it's about the villains, kind of. So.
Yep. All right. Well, continuing off the concept of the way you market different genres. We found that when we talk to people, like romance works with different tactics than, say, fantasy does. And do you feel like there are any marketing tactics that work particularly well for horror and dystopian type stuff that you don't think wouldn't work as well for other things?
Not necessarily. I mean, I haven't really done anything special, So honestly, I don't really think so. I think that you just kind of have to play to your market. On my social media and stuff, I'll post stuff about horror movies and all that kind of stuff. And I mentioned Jay Thorne a couple times. He and I are actually starting a horror podcast that's going to be just talking about horror movies and horror books and stuff. But honestly, I really don't think so. I think that you can pretty much apply a lot of this stuff to, in my opinion, you can kind of apply a lot of the same stuff to each genre. So.
Well, that's good to know, and I got to imagine that this is a time of year that's kind of handy for marketing horror.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a good point too. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm itching for The Walking Dead to come back on, because that was. And I'm glad you brought that up, because actually I honestly think that had a lot to do with my book taking off too. Like, because I put it out when the second half of the Walking Dead season was on, and not ironically, my biggest day of sales was Monday. Walking Dead comes on Sunday night, and Mondays were always my biggest day. So so I'm definitely itching for that to come back on TV. So not to mention I just want to watch it. So.
Yep. All right, so you mentioned that you were a drummer in a couple of heavy metal bands. My brother was a bassist in a couple of bands. I'm actually wearing one of his shirts, the
Oh,
ill-fated
nice.
Lumph. But do you think that you learned anything about self-promotion and merchandise during those days?
I think I learned everything about self-promotion and merchandise during those days. Um, yeah, for sure. And like I said, I was kind of the guy in my band that handled all that stuff. We were like the only local band that had a DVD. Like we had all this footage we'd record on tour, and it was just like us like goofing off, and I actually edited all that stuff and pressed the DVDs myself at home, printed the covers, like did everything. And I ran I did a lot of booking of shows too, so I would bring in big bands to come play and stuff, and then my band would open, which is probably not too much different than like putting your book in a box set with other people. So I would do that kind of stuff. I would run festivals, and make sure our band got a really good time slot and stuff. So yeah, I learned a ton, and it's funny saying it out loud now. I'm realizing how much I really did learn learn from it more than I even thought. So for sure, I think I learned the core of the stuff I know now is definitely from that time.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, like the side stuff that you develop, and I think it's for every course of life, where the stuff you learn while you're trying to figure out how to do what you want to do turns out to be the most useful lessons you pick up.
Absolutely. And this was during the MySpace time was real big and all that stuff, and so a lot of self-promotion stuff going on for sure.
All right, cool. All right, so the last thing I have sort of harkens back to the calls to action we were talking about. A lot of people say that you should have one clear call to action in a given situation, as in not two or three or four. Do you think that that's actually important, that you really try to focus on a single action?
Not necessarily. I pretty much have the big ones in my books, or I have the mailing list right when you finish the book, so it'll ask you, do you want to know when the next book's coming out or updates, blah blah. And then I kind of after that I have kind of an afterword, and then I'll have a call to action to do for reviews is in there as well. Which of course I took that one out when I was doing the reviews for the book. But no, and I think it's actually like I don't think you should have too much, like I don't think that you should have like, join my mailing list. Hey, this book's for pre-order. Hey, you might like this book. Hey, you should go leave a review. But I think that if you have like I think it's important to get people on your mailing list and try to get people to leave a review. I think those are the two big things. I have the mailing list in the front and the back. And then I have the review just in the back. I think those are the two most important things. And then other than that, just have your links where people can find you on social media, know where to go find your books, and I think you're all set.
That's that's good to know, because I know that I was like, I have a list of the books that I want. I'll have a list of my other books, but I'll also have a link to my newsletter, and I'll see so many people saying you need to have one clear call to action. I'm like, does that mean I should remove the references to my other books?
Yeah,
And I
see, I
haven't
don't think
found
so.
that I've injured myself in any way with it.
And the thing is, you have to understand too, is that people are conditioned to like know that you're going to have links to your other books in there. Like think about any traditionally published book you pick up, there's always like other stuff from the author in there. So like people are already conditioned to know that, and I think people are getting conditioned to know they're going to see a mailing list and a review thing in there as well.
Yep.
So like I don't think that I think that that's bad advice. I think you, like I said, you don't want to overdo it, but I think that there are key things you should be trying to get people to do. It now, what order you do them in, that's up to what what is your goal. I think what order you're going to do those things in is more important than worrying about whether you're going to overwhelm people or not. So if people are getting overwhelmed at the end of your book, they've already read the book, they can just close it and move on. So
Yep. All right. Well, that concludes my list. So I'm going to hand you off to Jeff for some final questions.
Cool.
All right. Okay, Zach. Do you have a strong social media presence? I mean, do you feel authors should utilize every avenue of social media available at their disposal?
Honestly, I really don't. I have less than 1,000 Twitter followers. My Facebook, I think I have like, I don't even remember how many likes I have on there. I do stuff and I try to connect to people that way. I think the biggest platform that I actually connect to people on, which I talked about this on Simon Whistler's show a lot, is Instagram. A lot of authors don't use Instagram, but when I was doing my weight loss stuff, that was the main platform I was on, and I grew to love it. So I actually got beta readers and stuff through Instagram, which is kind of funny because Instagram is really easy to look up hashtags and stuff. So I'd find people who would like post pictures of their Stephen King books, or they like The Walking Dead or whatever, and comment on their photos and like kind of start building a relationship with them. And then after a couple weeks, send them a direct message on there with like a cover of my book and say, hey, like we've kind of been chatting or whatever. Would you want to read this book for free to do for review? So I've gotten some review readers and stuff off Instagram, and I've gained some readers on there. But I think that I think you do need to do some sort of social media. You should be present because there are people who are going to want to talk to you. But I just think you shouldn't force yourself to be on a platform you don't want to be on. Pick one or two that you really like, but don't do it expecting it's going to sell you a bunch of books, because it's probably not. Do it to connect with people and to gain long-term readers that way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I don't do Twitter or anything else. I do have an Instagram account, but I haven't done too much of that yet. But I do I do use the Facebook a lot, and it's not to try and sell a book. If anything, it's just to say hello to the fans and pretty much prove I'm a human and not just some other person that can't be approached or whatnot. So I have fans all the time writing me up and say, oh yeah, I really like this character, or you use this other word a lot. And I'm like, damn, really? And I look in there and I'm okay. So sorry, I'll go ahead and switch that. I appreciate it. But yeah, we chat about all the time, favorite movies, favorite books, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it helps prove that you're an approachable guy, that you're not afraid to, talk to someone else. So that's what I pretty much use it for too.
And I think the other thing too is that once you get to a point, like it's going to be when you're first starting out and you don't have a mailing list, like you're going to want to like really peg social media. But I actually do most of my social stuff through my mailing list, by having autoresponders and stuff. So like 3 days after people sign up for my mailing list, I send them an email that says, thanks for joining. Here's some books I've been reading, and I'll have like a list of books, and I always swap them out, and it's usually friends' books that I've read, and I'll ask them, hey, what have you been reading? And like people respond, and then it sparks conversation, and that's kind of my social media is like is communicating with people on my mailing list more than going on Twitter and the whole buy my book thing. Like
right.
I mean, Twitter has been great for me to connect with people like Lindsay and like other authors and stuff, but I definitely don't use Twitter to sell books. I think it's a waste of time. So.
Yeah, and that actually boils into my other question here: is have there been any types of advertising that you feel, in your opinion, have been a complete waste of time and or money?
I mean, some of the mailing list, some of the book mailing list sites have been kind of a waste of money. I won't name any of them, but a few of them have been a waste of money. I've had conversations about this with friends where we're kind of wondering, like, is that kind of is the whole, just to say BookBub, like, is that model, like, is it going to last? Because are people going to want to keep getting these daily emails with all this stuff? Or are they just going to, because I know I'm a member of all of them and I just delete them. Like the only ones I even open are BookBub and eReader News Today. Even my last couple eReader News Today ads, like they were doing really well early in the year, and my last couple I've done have not done that great. And I've heard that from other people as well. So it's kind of
it's like the novelty's wearing off, and they're like, not again, and you just end up deleting it. So.
And yeah, exactly. And I mean, people getting hit every day, and it's kind of just like I kind of wonder if people are getting tired of it. Like I don't know, and I've never had a BookBub, so I don't know like what that's like. But yeah, so as far as wasting my money, I mean, just a couple of the book websites, but other than that, like I wouldn't say I've done anything that's wasted my money, wasted time, but not even really with that either.
All right.
So.
And my final question I would have for you is, what would you say has been the most surprising / effective, underrated form of advertising that you feel others should be taking advantage of but aren't? You kind of mentioned Instagram, and I'm kind of thinking that might be something I should look a little closer into because I like the idea of using hashtags to target who you want to talk to.
Well, yeah. Well, like here's the cool thing about Instagram is like, so people here's my opinion on Instagram. So like people go on Twitter and like all these authors you see on there doing the whole buy my book thing. Like it's people aren't going to stop to read that. Like people are moving so fast through Twitter and they're not going to stop to read that kind of stuff. On Instagram, you have the opportunity to grab someone's attention with something visual. So say you have a great book cover and you post that on there, like you can grab people's attention really quick with something like that. And they're more likely to stop and read what you have to say. I know some people have had a lot of luck selling paperbacks on Instagram, which is something I haven't really been able to nail. I have definitely sold some on there. But yeah, I would say Instagram is pretty underutilized. But again, like you have to want to be on there. Like no one should just go get on Instagram because I'm saying it's worked for me. Like it's gonna I've had people I've had people tell me Pinterest is great for selling books. Like I just don't get Pinterest, so I don't go on there. Yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing. And I guess kind of on the same subject, like I think that a lot of people, if a book's not selling, they want to go straight to ads and they want to just try stuff like that. But I would say like really look at your product. Like look at is your cover match your genre? What's your book description look like? Have you messed around with your keywords? Like before you start doing ads, like go look at some of those things. Like play around with your keywords, try to get more keywords in your description. Me and Matt were talking about the other day on Author Strong, and then there's a group that we're in where a guy took that advice and he like quadrupled his book sales over a few days just by changing some keywords and some description stuff. Like didn't even have to buy an ad. So I think that I think that type of stuff is very underutilized as well. Like really sit back and look at what are you trying to convey, and are you targeting the right audience with what you're saying and your descriptions and your keywords and with what your cover looks like.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, like I said, I've used Pinterest a little bit, but I have not yet figured out how to make it work best for me. I've posted some pictures of book covers, and that was about it. And got a few people interested, but they did not. I haven't figured out the formula yet for that, so I'm still messing with that. But yeah. Alrighty, that's it for my questions. I'm going to hand you back to Lindsay so she can wrap things up.
Perfect.
All right. Before I let you go here, I kind of want to ask, just out of curiosity, on Instagram, what kind of things are you posting? Because I think as a writer of adult fiction, you don't have a lot of images usually in your work, and
yeah.
I think people might wonder what to put up there.
So here's the key thing to that. It's not really what I post, like what I post, it's what post I'm liking and commenting on. Like I do a lot more of like looking at hashtags and going and commenting on other people's photos and building conversation that way than what I post. Like honestly, like I pretty much post pictures of my kid. And occasionally I'll post horror stuff and I'll post stuff about my books, but I've had more success like going out and like connecting with people through what they're posting more than what I post. That's worked for me. And then people keep asking for pictures of my kids, so I'm like, all right, whatever. Or beer, I put on there. So yeah, so I don't really spend a lot of time like posting a bunch of horror related stuff, and I found when I do, it really doesn't do a lot. So just going and connecting with other people has kind of helped me a lot more.
All right, sounds like good advice there. And I guess, do you have any, before we go, any tips for new authors starting out? Now that you're very experienced with 8 or 9 months here, you're an old pro. So
just I would say just have a really good idea going in. Like make sure you figure out what you want to do as far as like what kind of reader you want to attract go read books in that genre. Go look at product pages and covers and stuff, because you really want to try to build, like, really focus on your branding. If you go to my page, you're going to see like all my books look like, you can tell it's a Zach Bohannon book. Really convey that, and just really like focus on your brand, and just if your first book doesn't sell, just keep writing, just keep going, and listen to podcasts like this, because this type of stuff is very, very helpful. Follow people that you want to be like. That's probably the best advice I have. So.
All right, sounds good. And I definitely enjoy listening to podcasts myself, and it seems like every one of them, there's somebody's doing some little thing that's new to you as a listener, and will give you ideas like, oh, maybe I should try that out too. So, all right, well, before we let you go, why don't you tell people where to find you, and if there's any of your books that would be a good starter book to check out, please let us know.
Okay, yeah, so you can find me at zachbohannon.com is my website. I don't do a lot of stuff on there, but I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can just look up Zach Bohannon on those. And as I mentioned before, I'm launching the Horror Writers podcast. Is a podcast that Jay Thorne suspended a year ago, and he and I are bringing it back with a slightly different format. That actually launches this Sunday, October 4th. So you can check that out at thehorrorwriterspodcast.com. And as far as a book, Empty Bodies is, if you're in KU, you can read it for free, or it's only 99 cents. So.
All right, sounds great. And I'll put the links in the show notes. This is episode 49 at marketingsff.com if you all want to stop by and check it out. Thanks so much for coming on and joining us tonight, Zach.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, bye, everyone.
Thanks for all the info.